Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real Impartation Moment on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section, I quickly run with you the embryonic development of the arterial system. My friends, already we've looked at development of the heart, we've looked at the development of interatrial septum alongside interventricular septum. Please, if you've not watched those videos, kindly get those videos and of course watch it. But as well, for you to really understand this arterial system development that we are going to explain today, it will be useful that of course you previously watched the video that I've done on pharyngeal arches. But yes, there's no harm in doing it together over here, because I'll touch on something briefly and later you can go and watch the pharyngeal arches that I've already done. My friends, one thing that we have to know is that this development of arterial system, it is coming from scratch. Yes, it's the novel process that we are going to explain, okay? And therefore, one thing that I want you to know is that yes, it's going to commence around the 18 intrauterine life period, okay? That's when it's going to happen, and it will of course continue. Now, this is one thing that we call it vasculogenesis. That's development of blood vessels from scratch, okay? That's one thing that we have to understand. And then of course, yes, which is opposite to something we call angiogenesis. Now, after these main arterial blood vessels have been formed, then of course other ones will form. Yes, even beyond that kind of fetal life, even post-fetal life, till one dies. Yes, this kind of process we call angiogenesis will take place. But precisely what I'm going to treat today will be mainly what we call vasculogenesis. And therefore it makes sense that we need what we call primordial endothelial stem cells, okay, to go through this. So my friends, one thing that we have to understand about this thing is that we have to know about the pharyngeal arches. Yes, we know we have 6 pharyngeal arches. The 5th one disappears, it remains 5. Yes, so it means that each of these pharyngeal arteries will have its own artery. So we have pharyngeal arteries. Then we need something we call dorsal aorta. Yes, left and right dorsal aorta, which I will explain to you that they will be coming from what we call splanchnopleurotic lateral plate mesoderm. And then not only that, I will also need what we call, if I need dorsal, I also need ventral. So I will explain all these things to you as we move on. And so without much ado, let's set the ball rolling. So my friends, these are schematic representations of what is happening. Now, this I'm looking from back to front. That's what I'm looking at, this structure over here. So this one is more anterior, and therefore these are in front, okay? And as I come this way, this the back, so this is more posterior over here. And then as I go this way, I'm going in front. Now I see this guy over here, which I've written over here, aortic sac. My friends, this aortic sac is nothing but it's coming from what we call the ventral aorta. Left and right ventral aorta will fuse to form what we call aortic sac. And that is why it is not surprising that this aortic sac will also give off what we call right and of course left horns. Okay, so there will be a left horn and there will be a right horn of this aortic sac. Okay, so that is one thing that I want you to know. Then the question is, I told you that these ventral aorta alongside these guys that we find over here, which are called dorsal aorta, okay, left and right dorsal aorta, these guys, they are both coming from what we call the splanchnopleurotic lateral plate mesoderm. And how do they develop? Yes, you know that if you have ectoderm, and then between the ectoderm and the mesoderm, okay, we'll be having endoderm. Now, endoderm begins to secrete some kind of factors, yes, during the 3rd week of intrauterine life to transform some of these, lateral plate mesoderm, the splanchnopleurotic component that I'm talking about, yes, to become what we call these kind of cells that we are calling them the progenitor cells, the stem cells, which are going to give rise to these kind of endothelial cells, okay, developing into these kind of blood vessels we are talking about. Okay, so I told you that yes, I'm going to have ventrally, I'm going to have left and right ventral aorta coming from the splanchnopleurotic lateral plate mesoderm. Yes, this one, because they are left and right, they begin to fuse. And when they fuse, what will happen is that we have what we call the horns as well. Now, one thing that we want you to know about this aortic sac is that it is the cranial extension of what we call truncus arteriosus. My friends, you know about this truncus arteriosus more than I do. Yes, the cranial most portion of the heart tube is known as truncus arteriosus. and it's that portion which of course will have to go through that kind of septation, will have to be divided, okay, with the help of that kind of spiral artery, so that we get what we call the pulmonary trunk and of course the ascending aorta. Okay, that one we've looked at it. But what I'm trying to say is that yes, even cranial extension of this truncus arteriosus, which is derived from the splanchnoporrheic lateral plate mesoderm, is known as this aortic sac, which will be having left and right horns. Please get to know that. Then I also told you that from the dorsal aspect, you have what we call the left and right dorsal aorta. Okay, that's what we find over here. Left and right dorsal aorta. Okay, so that is what we see. Now normally we see that they refuse to have this common dorsal aorta, but I'm not interested in that so much. One thing is that yes, now these are the left and right dorsal aorta. You will see that they are connected to what we call the aortic sac by way of the ventral aorta, by way of these pharyngeal arteries. So you can see originally we were having 6 pharyngeal arteries. Of course, I mean the 5th one disappears. Okay, so we have the first pharyngeal arch, its artery is over there in the mesoderm, the second, third, 4th, 5th, and of course 6th. Of course later the 5th one will disappear, it won't thrive at all. Okay, so that is, I mean, one thing that we find over here. They are connected, okay, connecting this dorsal aorta, both left and right, to of course the aortic sac. Okay, so that is, I mean, one thing that we have to know. Now these things initially in the early embryonic life, they were there, but what will happen is that they will have to give rise to the final arteries that we are going to talk about. The final arteries, where are they going to come from? So my friends, one other thing too that we find over here is that from the dorsal aorta, from both left and right dorsal aorta, we see some other arteries emerging from there, going laterally. And these are giving off those kind of segments, and so we call them intersegmental arteries. So there are several intersegmental arteries that we are going to see emerging from the dorsal aorta. Okay, so that's one thing that we find. Now my friends, one thing is that we have some of the segments in the neck region, so they will become cervical intersegmental. We have the thoracic, and we have even lumbar. So I am more interested in this guy over here, which I will show you. Yes, I'm more interested in the 7th, not the 6th, not the first 6. I'm interested in the 7th intersegmental artery. So that is what I will be, putting most of my energy on. So now, what have we seen? Let's look at what will happen, which will give rise to all these arteries that we are talking about. Yes, my friends, if you know about this thing, then you know about the arterial development, you know about the vasculogenesis that I'm talking about. Now I told you that yes, we are having the ventral, so please get to know that. Now this guy over here is known as the truncus arteriosus. Please pay attention so that you get these things I'm talking about. This guy over here is the truncus arteriosus. I told that truncus arteriosus is the cranial-most portion of the bulbous cordis, okay, of the heart tube. So that's the truncus arteriosus, going to give rise to, of course, the ascending aorta and the pulmonary trunk through the spiral septum, giving that partitioning. Then I told you that even cranial to this truncus arteriosus, developing from what we call the splanchnoporrheic lateral plate mesoderm, will be the left and right, okay, ventral aorta. Now my friends, the left and right ventral aorta, yes, will fuse to become what we call the aortic sac. So simple terms, the aortic sac is the cranial extension of the truncus arteriosus. This guy over here, the cranial extension, is known as the aortic sac. My friends, one thing that we know about this aortic sac, because it's coming from the fusion of left and right ventral aorta, yes, it's going to have, the fusion didn't take place completely, therefore it's having the horns. It will be having the left horn of aortic sac, then of course it will also be having the right horn of aortic sac. As simple as that. Okay, so that is one thing that we find over here. Now then, I told you that developing again from the dorsal aspect, but also coming from the splanchnoporrheic lateral plate mesoderm, I see what we call, now look at where my cursor is running. This guy over here is known as the right dorsal aorta. Look at where my cursor is running. It is running downwards, all the way till, yes, it goes down. Okay, so this is the right one, belonging to the right aspect of the embryo. Yes, it's going to the right side, so we call it the right, is to the posterior aspect, so right dorsal aorta. Yes, similarly, yes, from the left side, yes, look at where my cursor is running. Yes, it's coming from all the way from the cranial aspect. Okay, that's the left dorsal aorta coming downwards all the way. Okay, so I'm having the ventral aorta, okay, which have fused, okay, to become the aortic sac, having the left and of course the right horns. Then I'm also having the right and of course the left dorsal aorta. Now I told you that these left and right, these aortic sac, and of course the left and right dorsal aorta, they are connected by way of the arteries within the pharyngeal arches, the mesoderm of the pharyngeal arches. So I told you that we have 6 pharyngeal arches, the 5th one disappears, okay, and therefore remaining 5. But of course, so that's what we are going to look at. Now please look over here. The first thing that I want you to know, okay, is that yes, from the ascending aorta, yes, coming from this truncus arteriosus, now I have this aortic sac, okay. Now so it means that from ascending aorta, what artery are we talking about? The artery which will continue from the ascending aorta, yes, should be the arch of aorta. So my friends, then the question is, what are the derivatives of the arch of aorta? So let's look at how it is arching, okay. So that is the arch of aorta. Okay, so whenever we talk about the arch of aorta, now the arch of aorta is more towards the left side. Okay, so that is what we see. So if that is the arch of aorta, then what are the derivatives of this arch of aorta? So my friends, if we talk about the arch of aorta, we are looking at it even starting from the aortic sac itself. So the aortic sac is giving rise to the arch of aorta. Not only that, it's continuing in what we call the left horn of aortic sac. Then my friends, this guy over here, now I told you that in the left side too, we are going to have 6 pharyngeal arteries over there. Now this time around, I am interested in what we call the 4th arch artery, okay, the left 4th arch artery, 4th pharyngeal arch artery, okay, the one over here, okay, is the left. So what I mean to say is that yes, this is the 4th, there will be the 5th. The 5th one I told you to degenerate, that's why you don't see it over there. This will be the 6th. Okay, so if I go to the 4th down, this one will be the 3rd. I'll get the 2nd, and of course the 1st. Okay, so I am interested in what we call the 4th arch artery, branchial arch artery over there. Okay, that will be connecting, of course, this left horn of aortic sac to, of course, the left dorsal aorta. Now we are not done. Even the this portion, portion that I have over here will also, okay, become part of what we call the arch of aorta. So it is arching like this, okay. First from aortic sac, from left horn of aortic sac, from of course the 4th arch artery, then of course from some portion of the distal portion of what we call the left dorsal aorta. Okay, so these are the derivatives. If we are asked to tell the derivatives of what we call the where are the sources that we are going to have this kind of aortic arch? Don't forget, now we are looking at truncus arteriosus. You know that one is giving rise to the ascending aorta, and therefore when I go upwards, I'm going to form the arch of aorta. And what are the components? Yes, I've told you, that's the aortic sac, left horn of aortic sac, the left 4th pharyngeal arch artery, and then of course we continue downwards in the distal portion of some portion of what we call the left dorsal aorta. Okay, as simple as that. Okay, so that's very good. Now the next thing is that if you have seen the arch of aorta, you know that on the arch of aorta you have the BSC or the BCS branches coming out of it by way of course the brachiocephalic trunk, by way of the left common carotid artery and the left subclavian artery. Now my friends, let me talk about something simple over here. You know that the left subclavian artery, yes, will be to the leftmost portion, from right to left. That's the BCS branches. So the S, which is toward the left, is this one. The left subclavian artery is coming from this. Now look at this one. This is the arch of aorta. Coming from it, okay, I see this one. This one I told you is the left, okay, 7th intersegmental artery. It's more toward the neck region, so we want to qualify with the word cervical. So the left 7th cervical intersegmental artery. And you know that the C7 vertebrae, yes, is more towards the upper limb. That's the one which is going to give rise to the left subclavian artery, growing in this upper limb bar that is forming over here. So what is happening is that yes, continues to grow downwards. Yes, we know that this left subclavian artery will eventually, yes, become what we call the left axillary artery. It will also become, yes, the left brachial artery. Then of course it will divide, yes, to give rise to, of course, the ulnar and the radial arteries. So that is what is happening. Yes, so everything about the upper limb, that is why it is developing within the upper limb bar. The left 7th cervical intersegmental artery that we find over here is to the left. So it's as simple as that. Only a single source for, of course, the left subclavian artery. Okay, it's as simple as that. Now, if I talk about the right subclavian artery, which of course will be coming from brachiocephalic trunk, it's a different story altogether. I'll explain that one to you. But because we are having the left 7 cervical intersegmental artery, yes, the same thing for the right one, which will also be developing in the slim bud. Yes, we also have what we call the right 7th cervical intersegmental artery. Now, please bear in mind, just keep an eye on this one. I'll come to it later. Now, so I've seen the left subclavian artery. Okay, so then how about what we call the next one, which is of course the left, the left common carotid artery. Okay, that's the next thing that we have to know. Now, for the left common carotid artery as well as the right, there's no difference at all. The sort of, the derivatives are essentially the same. Okay, so let's look at it. Now, this is the arch of aorta. We've seen this one emerging from there, which was of course the left subclavian artery. So the left common carotid artery will be coming from this. So what do we see over here? Yes, the left, common carotid artery, okay, will be coming from, now look at this one. Now I've told you about, it is coming from what you call the third arch artery. Now the arch of aorta was derived from the fourth arch artery. So if I come cranial, I'm going to the third arch artery. So from the third arch artery, I'm going to have what we call the common carotid artery. But my friends, there's a catch. There is a catch. The catch is that now you see that there's that kind of discontinuation. There's something, sprouting out over here. So that portion, okay, the proximal part, please get to know that the proximal part of what we call the third pharyngeal arch artery, okay, will give rise to, of course, the common carotid artery for both left and right. So please get to know that for both left and right. Let me just quickly tell you, for the right too is the proximal part over here of what we call the right pharyngeal arch artery. Okay, for both of them. Why? Because once I see this thing emerging out over here, is the emergence, okay, that bud which will grow to eventually become what we call the the external carotid artery. Now get to know something, my friends. This guy which is emerging over here, which will be coming from the external carotid artery, then it tells me that it's an example of what we call something we call angiogenesis and not vasculogenesis. Okay, common carotid artery, the proximal part of the third arch artery. Okay, that is of course vasculogenesis, no problem. But there's something sprouting out which is developing over here from this vessel, and therefore it becomes an example of angiogenesis. Then of course it means that the continuation of this, okay, continuation of the third arch artery alongside the proximal aspect of the left dorsal aorta, yes, will be what we call the internal carotid artery. So my friends, if we are asked to tell the internal carotid artery for both left and right, they are the same. Yes, it will be coming from, of course, the distal aspect of what we call the third arch artery alongside the cranial aspect of what we call the left dorsal aorta. Okay, so please get to understand this one for us. Okay, just get to know that for the common carotid artery, it just coming as a bud which will grow, yes, and then of course becoming what we call the external carotid artery for both left and of course right. So if I come to the right too, is could be coming from what we call the right, the right common carotid artery will be coming from the proximal aspect of the third pharyngeal arch artery. Okay, then the distal aspect of the third arch artery alongside the cranial portion of the right dorsal aorta, yes, will be giving rise to, of course, the right internal carotid artery. Then of course the right external carotid artery will begin as a bud which will grow upwards, yes, to becoming, of course, the external carotid artery. An example of angiogenesis, yes, instead of the vasculogenesis that we see for, of course, the common carotid artery, okay, alongside, of course, the internal carotid artery. Okay, so please get to understand this principle. Now, having talked about the third arch artery and the fourth arch artery, one thing that we find which has degenerated already, yes, is this guy that we see, which we call a Ductus Characteristics. My friend, this guy is called Ductus Characteristics. Now, if you look at it, you see that this Ductus Characteristics is serving, okay, as a connection, okay, between, of course, the dorsal aorta, which will be at the junction between, of course, the fourth arch artery and then, of course, the third arch artery and of course the fourth arch artery. Yes, by my friends, it becomes ligamentous. Yes, there's no lumen over there any longer. Yes, in early embryonic life, okay, to become what we call ligamentum caroticum. Okay, so that is, one thing that we find. Okay, good. Now, having seen that, then the next one that we have to look at is the brachiocephalic trunk. Now, we've seen the left common carotid artery from the arch of aorta coming from only the left cervical intersegmental artery. Then we've seen what we call both the right and left, common carotid arteries, they are the same. But the left one is coming from the arch of aorta by way of the proximal part of what we call the fourth arch artery, giving us the left common carotid artery, the right one being giving us that of the right. Then, of course, we said that, yes, the distal portion of what we call the left fourth arch artery alongside the cranial portion of the left dorsal aorta will be giving rise to, of course, the left internal carotid artery. Yes, is the right side which will give rise to that of the right portions. Then, of course, growing as a bud at the junction between the common carotid artery and the internal carotid artery, we find this, this sprout which will be going, okay, as a bud over there. That will be the external carotid artery, an example of angiogenesis. Okay, so that is what we see. Now, the next one that we want to talk about is the brachiocephalic trunk. My friends, let's look at the brachiocephalic trunk more towards the right side, and that is why the brachiocephalic trunk is this guy over here that we see over here, and therefore brachiocephalic trunk is emergent from only from the right horn of the aortic sac. As simple as that, right horn of the aortic sac. Therefore, it tells me that, yes, is that one which will have to give rise to the common carotid artery, and therefore, yes, it will be emerging from it. Okay, that way. And then the next one which will be coming from this brachiocephalic trunk will be, of course, the right, subclavian artery. So what are the components of the right subclavian artery? Unlike in the case of the left subclavian artery, which was only emerging from the left cervical intersegmental artery, that of the right will not be emerging from only the right cervical intersegmental artery. No. But alongside there will be other portions, because this is the brachiocephalic trunk, and therefore the right subclavian artery should be emerging all the way from here where my cursor is running, all till it enters this limb bud over here. So what are the components? The components, yes, will be, of course, this guy that we find here, which of course will be the right fourth arch artery. It's as simple as that, the right fourth arch artery. And then continuing downwards, we have some portion of the distal portion of what we call the right dorsal aorta, and then to continue as in what you call the limb bud going into the what you call the right cervical intersegmental artery. Okay, so that is one thing that we see. So my friends, keep an eye on the right subclavian artery more than that of the left, because the left is pretty simple. Yes, the left cervical intersegmental artery, but for that of the right, it will be coming from the right fourth arch artery. Not only that, it will also be coming from what we call some portion of the distal portion of what we call the right dorsal aorta alongside the right cervical intersegmental artery. Okay, so that is what we see. Now, having seen that, then the next thing that we have to also look at, we've looked at that one. Now, we've seen the pulmonary trunk. Now, yes, that's the pulmonary trunk will also be coming from, of course, this truncus arteriosus, which will be divided by the spiral septum. Okay, now, if we've seen the ascending aorta, then the pulmonary trunk, then we know the pulmonary trunk will have to divide into what we call the left and right pulmonary arteries. It's as simple as that. Now, if I look at the right pulmonary artery, then what will happen is that the right pulmonary artery will be coming, okay, from what we call the proximal portion of what we call the sixth arch artery, the right sixth arch artery, the right pulmonary artery. Okay, that is what we see. Why? Because already we have what you call this kind of lung bars that we find over here, which I will explain when we look at the foregut. When we look at the development of the gut tube, I will explain that one for you. Now, similarly, now you can see that this one is in blue. Yes, because one thing is that pulmonary trunk, and for that matter, pulmonary arteries will be carrying oxygen-poor blood. Okay, that's why you see the blue color over here. And then when I look at that one for the right too, yes, the same thing. It will be coming from what we call the proximal portion of what we call the sixth arch artery. That's the left pulmonary artery. Okay, that is what we see. It will be invading these kind of landmarks that we find over here. Okay, that is what we see. But my friends, for the left one, unlike the right one, where of course the distal portion will degenerate, yes, but that of the left one, what is happening is that there's still a connection between, of course, the distal portion of what we call the sixth arch artery and of course the the lower portion of what we call the left dorsal aorta. My friends, one thing is that the lower portion of this left dorsal aorta, yes, will be the arch of aorta, which will be going downwards. As you can see, it will be going downward. The left one doesn't degenerate, unlike in the case of the right one, which of course the distal portion will degenerate. Okay, the right dorsal aorta. But for the left dorsal aorta, it will continue from the arch of aorta and to become descending aorta. Okay, that is one thing that we find. Okay, so that is a good useful thing that we have to understand over here. So now, having seen that, what is that connection? What's the name of that connection between, of course, this the distal portion of the left pharyngeal arch artery, and then of course the what we call the aorta. Okay, and my friends, this guy over here is known as the ductus arteriosus. So that we try to shunt blood. We don't want the blood to go to the lung. Okay, the lung is not fully developed, so we want to shunt the blood, okay, into what we call the aorta. Okay, so that we bypass the lung. Okay, so that is one thing that we find. Of course, we know that after postnatal life, what's going to happen is that this ductus arteriosus, which is having an eponym of Ductus Botalli, okay, Botalli is someone's name, so we begin with capital letter B. Okay, Ductus Botalli. Okay, that's the ductus arteriosus. It becomes remnant. Okay, it degenerates and becomes ligamentum arteriosum. Okay, so that is what we see. Now, one thing that I just want to summarize this one for you. Now, one thing that we looked at, okay, when we looked at the pharyngeal arches, was that we talked about the first arch artery. So one thing is that the first arches, which you don't see them over here, they were some kind of remnants which were giving rise to some kind of other things. For instance, the first arch artery, yes, is something we call the maxillary artery. The remnant will give rise to what we call maxillary artery. The second arch artery, the remnant will give rise to what we call the stapedial and hyoid arteries. Please, those of you who have watched that video, you understand what I'm talking about. But if you've not watched it, please kindly go and get that video link and watch it. Now, we talked about the third arch. Okay, so the first arch artery was maxillary artery, remnants of this first arch artery. Then we talked about the second arch artery, pharyngeal artery. We have what we call stapedial and hyoid artery. Then if I go to the third arch artery, I told you that the third arch artery, if you remember, will be coming from common carotid artery and of course internal carotid artery. That's what we said. So please, if you remember, for both left and right, we talked about common carotid artery and of course internal carotid artery. Then the fourth arch artery, what I told you was that for the left, it was the arch of aorta. The left fourth arch artery, we talked about the arch of aorta. But for that of the right, your answer will have to be, of course, the left common carotid artery. That's one useful thing that you have to understand. If you remember what we said, and these are justified over here, that the right one, instead of being arch of aorta, no, it is not arch of aorta, it is the right subclavian artery, and for that of the left is the arch of aorta. Yes, of course, we talked about the fifth arch artery, that it will disappear. Fifth artery, we don't have anything there, no problem. Then, but I told you that for the sixth arch artery, the artery over there was of course the pulmonary arteries for both left and right. But alongside the left, we also have what we call the ductus arteriosus, justifying what we explained the last time. Okay, so please, I hope you understand all that I've explained to you. It's very simple. Just take your time and then go through all these things. All right, I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.